Okay, and is everyone here? Was anyone else? Are we expecting anyone else?
No,
Okay.
the mayor and Michelle Carroll are on Zoom with us.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, well then I guess we're ready to begin. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is our March Public Health and Safety Committee meeting. And we're going to start just by approving the minutes from February. So can we go ahead and approve those?
Sure. What do you do? This is all new that we approve minutes. Do you need a motion for that?
Yeah.
Okay, motion to approve.
Okay, so we're good with the minutes. We approved the minutes.
Okay.
So next on our agenda we have our status of command, and then we'll go through some traffic concerns. So John.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everybody. This is our status of command report for meeting number 3 on March the 4th at 9 a.m. Just to go through some basics real quick, we touched on this last night about the update for our parking controllers, obviously effective March 3rd, 21st. We're going to have a full-time parking controller and a part-time parking controller. The full-time parking controller will be Mr. Paul Frosch, and the part-time parking controller will be Mr. John Doyle. And I know we spoke at length about that last night. And I know in the interest of time, it's probably in our best to just move on. So I am going to wait until we talk about the fleet when we hit the action items in the 4 section. So I just want to move down into municipal police officer education and training certifications. I have some updates about that. So again, the emergency vehicle operations training at Montgomery County Public Safety Academy, that scheduling is in progress. That's a little spotty right now based on availability. So, but we'll be getting that done. But I do really have some good news in terms of completion already. So far for firearms training at the Public Safety Academy, we already have 1 officer completed and 4 scheduled, which is usually unusual by this time. We usually don't have anybody completed on firearms training until after the spring arrives. So we're pleased to actually already be in progress. When it comes to the municipal police officer education and training classes at Montgomery County Community College, we already have 3 officers completed and 2 scheduled. That's excellent. By this time, that's excellent. So there is a major push this year by the state, just to let everybody know, that they want all municipal police officer and education and training commission training completed by June the 30th. So it's a little unusual this year. So we are right on target. We're going to be fine. We'll probably meet that criteria. In addition to that, first aid, CPR, and AED. I'm pleased to report 2 officers already are done, and we have 3 scheduled. So I want to jump down into my training. So I am already certified for the year. I've already completed all my training classes for Municipal Police Officer Education and Training Commission classes, as well as first aid and CPR, legal updates. I'm going to a sexual harassment and workplace discrimination conference on April 29th at the Philadelphia Police Academy, which is excellent. So my classes are done. The only thing that I will have left is firearms training, and the department will be certified. In terms of the supervisory training for Sergeant Mike Vernaccio, we're looking at a potential month of July. We had to move that because now more in-person classes are being scheduled. We had him scheduled with the Penn State Justice and Safety Institute for POSIT training, but that was going to be Zoom. They were all Zoom options. So we really want the networking and the interaction. So now Penn State is starting to open up in-person classes. So we're going to get Sergeant Mike Vernaccio scheduled for one of them instead. And there is one nearby in July in Exton, Pennsylvania, and it'll last for 1 full week. We'll see if we can get him scheduled for that. In addition to the other updates, Officer Lynn has already completed training for dealing with the mentally ill on February the 10th, which was a Friday. Officer McCabe has already completed duty to intervene training, and that was on Thursday, the 24th. In addition to that, fair and impartial policing officer Dan Dutton is doing that via Zoom right now as we speak, and that will be completed. So the only thing left will be Officer Belfi use of force next week, and cybersecurity awareness for Sergeant Vernaccio on the 24th, which is a Thursday in March. And that's about it. The only thing I wanted to touch on before we left is due to the fact that obviously everybody knows what happened on February 21st with the carjacking, a use of force incident that happened on February 10th in the borough, and quite a busy month that it's been for us in February. We were unable to do a traffic enforcement initiative in February, but we will be scheduling one in the very near future this month as we're rolling on to March the 4th. So I just wanted to give everybody an update on our monthly traffic enforcement because I feel it's very, very important that the Public Safety and the Public Health and Safety Committee have the updates monthly about traffic enforcement in the borough. Because that is one of the biggest complaints, as you know, Samantha, that we always get in the office or in the police department is about traffic concerns. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, John. One of the roles of the committee could be to explore kind of out-of-the-box training options, because that we might send your way, John, for your consideration. So I know Cindy has had some ideas about the ICA training.
Yeah, the ICA, and actually, I think your point, John, to say, so we had a carjacking on 223 and another incident, and that really deflected our ability to be able to do traffic enforcement, kind of really underscores the need to control traffic through traffic calming in the built environment. John, as you know, there's the ability to get an environmental design public safety certificate through law enforcement. I would suggest that we maybe join that as a borough and ask that one of the officers get a certification in that space to really work with infrastructure, our committee, FNA, and the public works to say, okay, how do we collectively, through policing and the built environment, do what is our number one issue here in Narberth, which is traffic safety? Because again, to your point, when there is a crime, we need law enforcement. That takes precedent over someone with the legal authority to control a crime versus traffic, which we know can be calmed, through reducing street signs, stormwater pump outs, etc. I think it would be really exciting for us to say we'd like to ask an officer to get certified.
So, and what would the certification be?
It's on environmental design and public safety. Rob, I think I sent this to you.
If Cindy mentioned it to me, John, and I thought maybe we could share this with you just for your review, and if you think it would be useful.
Yeah, I'd like to look at it. That'd be great. Do we know how long, what kind of timeline it would be to get such certification?
There's lots of workshops, and of course I can't pull it up on my fingertips right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
ICA, I'm sorry, you
Yeah,
said you used
it's
ICA.
here we go. We just actually missed a workshop. It's the International Crime Prevention through Environmental Design Association.
Okay. International Crime
Prevention through Environmental Design Association.
Through Environmental Design. Okay.
I can even send it to you, so it's...
Yeah, that'd be great.
So you don't...
Honestly, I think it's just worthwhile just taking it slow on that because a lot of people may have never considered the fact that design features in the environment might contribute to a more healthy and safe community because it's not intuitive. You think like, well, if there's bad guys around, why would they, or people who are inclined to break laws, why would it be any different, say, on a tree-lined street or in a place that's well lit, or to put, I mean, it's not. I mean, maybe you understand lighting better, but why trees? It's not. It doesn't make total sense immediately. So that's why I think it's worthwhile just explaining it a little bit.
I think that's helpful because it's what I teach, so it isn't. So the reminder to like, oh, this isn't common conversation is actually helpful. One of an officer candidate that we had actually worked with through the civil service actually had the certification and talked about in their interview. One of their roles was to actually work with local businesses to say, let's talk about the timing of your lighting inside your business. Let's talk about planners, where it makes sense to have a planner, window design, what you want to do, working with, how do you narrow the street to calm traffic, all the things that I think we consistently talk about, that it'd be really interesting to, again, utilize that budget line when we put built environment under public safety is to say, let's have our officers do this. One of the things actually in West Philly, a quick story about lighting, is Councilwoman Janie Blackwell kept getting all these calls. You got to get out here, you got to get out here. She's sending, crime is up, this street's scary. She's sending officers out, she's pulling the data going, there's nothing more. The data's not increased, the calls to service are increasing, what's going on? 18 months later, she sent somebody out, they changed the light bulbs, and it was like a haze. And it did legit look like a zombie was gonna jump out of the bushes, but it was a shift that no one had communicated. So it was like, oh, something's different and my radar's up, I'm gonna call, which we want people to do. Like, if you feel like
But
something's
did they
off.
actually see a measurable blip in different
Yeah,
activities?
so they saw an increase in call to service, but not in actual crime. And they're like, what the hell is going on here?
Oh, I see.
And I say that story because I thought, oh, that's really interesting in the connection between environmental design and, to your point, Bob, lighting. And there is a connection with law enforcement, and particularly because, John, you're always saying, you feel like something's not right, you call us. Like, we're in a small room, we want you to have that relationship.
Yeah, is that something, Cindy, you could email the whole committee?
Yeah, I'll do it right now.
You know, and then, you know, when you have time, John, maybe we could see what would be involved and if you think it would be a good fit.
And maybe it's something like someone from police, someone from council, someone from public work goes to.
Well, maybe why don't we do this, just looking at our agenda for this
Yeah.
one? Maybe, yeah, Cindy, if you could send that
Send it.
around, and then at
Yep.
like next month's meeting, we could put it on the agenda.
Perfect.
And just to let you know, it certainly sounds like it's a child of two other programs that have been tried and true in policing. One is called the Triple C, Eliminating Conditions Conducive to Crime. And number two is called Weed and Seed, where basically in an urban area, you kind of weed out blight and you seed in positive things. So it does, you know, these are concepts that have been tried and true in terms of urban law enforcement. So, you know, it's nothing different, but it certainly sounds intriguing because it sounds like, based on what you're describing, Cindy, it has in fact grown in different directions.
Okay, great. So let's go, so thank you, John. We'll go to the traffic concerns.
Great, thank you, Rob. So for 3.1, the Sabine Ave, so as we talked about last month, myself and the Public Works Manager really looked closely at the instruction manual for the traffic equipment that we have. And Public Works did adjust it in accordance with the instruction manual to try to get more accurate traffic data. However, looking at the information we still collected, I still think it's capturing traffic going both ways on Sabine, not just any wrong way traffic. So I don't know, I think my recommendation to the committee, looking at our process for this, you know, usually the process would be look at the data, then decide if we want Mike Schneider involved or not, our traffic engineer. Given that we're unable to collect, you know, the sort of data we'd like to see, I would like to ask permission from the committee just to go ahead and have Mike Schneider take a look and see what his thoughts are on whether one-way traffic is a problem or not, and if so, what the possible solutions would be.
Just on Sabine.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it may be our longest standing complaint, you know, to this committee. It's been on our agenda since I've been on the committee. So I would support that.
Yeah, I think that way we can just finally get it resolved for the benefit of the residents on Sabine and for the borough to get some, now I'm not guaranteeing we would do anything, but to get some clarity on it, whether we should or shouldn't, or what should happen with it.
And Samantha, you're only having this trouble on Sabine, collecting data?
Well, this is the first one we've done the data collection on.
Can I just ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
When Mr. Schneider does this, after he does his analysis of the block, could you ask him, because this has been such a sticky wicket for the borough, could you ask him to come and talk to the committee about what he finds?
Yeah,
So that we
sure.
can have a back and forth with him, because we've been listening to the concerns of those residents so much, and I think we want to address specifically things about you know, parking on that street, not just direction of flow, but the way in which the parking restrictions are, like whether there may be things that I'd just like to be able to talk to him about it.
So I guess I would say to that actually, so I am fine with Mike coming here to talk to the committee about the specific traffic complaints we've received. I guess I would think some of those other concerns that you brought up might be more in line with our next agenda item we have with this TCDI study. That sounds a lot more big picture.
Well, I meant with regard to the Sabine Avenue specifically. Like there's a prohibition, for example, on parking on one side of that street. it seems to many people that if you allowed cars to park on both sides of the street, it would calm
gotcha.
traffic
Yeah, I'm with you.
and not
Yeah.
necessarily be a hazard to pedestrians. But we have the residents saying, oh, if you have parking on both sides of the streets, it's a hazard to pedestrians, to small children.
Right.
And yet we see data that actually parking on both sides of the street calms traffic.
Sorry, now I
So
understand.
that's
Yeah.
why I'm asking if he could please come and interact with us. We could have some,
Mhm.
Yeah.
we could have some deeper understanding.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we could
That's
definitely do
good.
Perfect. Great.
So then for item 3.2, speaking of for the year and that sort of thing. And we talked a bit more about the traffic circulation audit that this committee had brought up over the past 2 or 3 months. Again, to remind everyone at home or watching this recording later, again, this is part of the borough's comprehensive plan. In addition to that, there's been talk in the borough about complete streets, about active transportation, which again are things that are in our comprehensive plan. And so talking with our traffic engineer, he recommended and he provided a scope of work in the packet that we do one kind of holistic study of multimodal transit in the borough that would help us do, the traffic circulation audit, complete streets, and active transportation, and really tie it all together so we could then start making improvements that would benefit pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicle users in the borough. And as he notes, the price quote, given how encompassing the study is $150,000. So, sorry about that. So to help pay for it, he identified this, Transportation Community Development Initiative grant to pay for the vast majority of the costs of this. In my last job, I managed a TCDI grant. I did not apply for it. That grant had been awarded when I started working in my last job. And that grant paid for 90% of the cost for a Main Street study in the last place that I worked. So I think a substantial portion of this study could be paid for by a TCDI grant if we're able to apply for it. I think this is kind of I think this is something we talked about a lot. I think it's something the borough would really benefit from. And I forget what priority level these items were in the comp plan. I feel like at least 1 or 2 of them were high priority items. I think the traffic circulation might have been a high priority item. But I think it's something we should really try and move forward with, especially if the grant would be able to pay for it. I would say this, just thinking about the deadline on this grant and the other things that we're working on, I would like permission to pay Pannoni to assist with the grant application. Also, given the technical nature of this grant. So to pay for that, of course, the borough has its engineering budget. As I mentioned in last night's council meeting, we also did dedicate $15,000 in this year's budget just to active transportation planning. And I'd like permission basically to use that money maybe to help pay for this grant application, since it would help them lead to an active transportation plan. Another grant opportunity along the same lines that actually that Kent Baird from HRG brought to my attention is the WalkWorks grant program, which focuses specifically on active transportation planning. And that's one that Kent and I together did apply for in the past and get successfully complete. And that can be another source of funding to help maybe supplement the TCDI grant. And again, that's one I think that myself working with Pannoni could work on applying for.
Mhm. Great. Yeah, because I know you have teed up a few different grants, so I would definitely support, paying Pannoni to help, because it's just so much work to put these together, and we have a tight timeline, right? These are due in the next month or so.
Yeah.
How is WalkWorks different than TCDI?
Sure. So WalkWorks is focused more on, as the name implies, like from a health perspective of getting people out to walk more. And as part of that, it funds studies that allow municipalities to then improve conditions for walking and biking in the community. So it has kind of a more narrow focus, whereas the TCDI grant would also be able to pay for all forms of transportation.
So they really supplement each other.
Yeah, so it almost would be like the TCDI grant, would pay for most of it, and then the WalkWorks grant can help pay for the, active transportation component of the proposal from Panoni.
So just to clarify, I'm sorry, there are 4 grants that are due in the next 2 months that we're applying for.
So we've already applied for the county one, for the county.
Okay, so you got that in March 1st, okay.
Yeah, we have the local share statewide grant that's due March 15th. We have the Montgomery County Recovery Office, that like ARPA funding that's due by the end of April. We have the, let's see here, and then we might have, there might be 1 or 2 others that we might be involved in. And then this one, yeah. So.
Yeah, so, but these two really go together, so, if we can pay Panoni to put in some hours to develop the materials, they could be used for both
Yeah, I think
applications.
so, yeah. And I think if we're willing to pay Panoni to be involved in it, especially given the amount of money we'd get if we were awarded the grant, I think that's a good return on investment. And I think it's a very strong, application we've had for both programs.
I just want to make an aside comment. Since Councilperson Rickards was elected for over 6 years ago, I guess, 4 years ago, over 4 years ago to council, she's been saying, if only we could apply for some grants.
Right.
If only we had the capacity to apply for grants. And now she's asking, do we have the capacity to apply for all these grants?
I have to say, I don't want to take my committee to your committee, but I just wrote down F&A. We need a budget line grant writing support.
Yeah.
Because I do, in all seriousness, think, there's also, as council, we have a responsibility to say, how are we not going to burn out the office?
Yes, exactly.
And in all seriousness, I think we need to allocate funds. Like, if you can outsource grant writing to someone, we need to do it. And I would almost say, as a council, we need to say, let's find the funds to do that, and then we'll plan in next year's budget that as a discrete
Well,
line.
it can, as you say, it can pay for itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have many talented writers, who work on a freelance basis, who could be hired hourly.
So just ask.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this one, if we can, Panoni has offered their support in writing and submitting it, and I would like to take them up on that.
Okay, great. And I just as a final point on this, Cindy, with your committee, one of the goals for next year, as Samantha mentioned, was to kind of develop a grant schedule. Was that right?
Yeah, that definitely has been on my to-do list, get the grant calendar done, so that way we're.
So for 2023, we could have that.
We can, and it does seem to just be all at once, which is outside of our control. But we should map these.
Yeah, and the thing that's been especially challenging this year is like is that state local share grant kind of came out of nowhere. Like that's a completely new grant program. And then this county one that council talked about last night, again, kind of came out of nowhere. But usually, grants do follow a predictable application, cycle. And I think the grant calendar for 90% of the time would be a huge help with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So, okay, well, thank you for all that. And I know the infrastructure committee, Michelle is very interested in, possibly taking some of this work on in her committee with regard to complete streets, once we get it going. Okay, well, let's go to 4. We have the vehicle fleet options for 2022.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'll start by having the chief speak to the repairs that unfortunately we had to spend money on since our last meeting on the existing fleet. Then maybe I can speak for a few minutes with some help from the chief on what maybe our options going forward for new vehicles are, and then we welcome feedback from the committee.
Thank you, Samantha. So the good news is that one of our vehicles that needed a new catalytic converter, our SUV, was covered by recall. So we have that currently out in Marple Harp Ford, that's getting repaired. We're hoping to have that back by today or tomorrow, which is good news. The other good news is that we recently started to outsource some of our repair services to Accurate Automotive within the borough instead of going out to Belmont Hills. And I can tell you that this person has been just outstanding with maintaining our fleet and getting stuff done, and turnaround times have just been incredible. The one thing that we had to do, unfortunately, is really recognize the fact, all of us collectively as a group, that the idle time on these police vehicles just tears them up, absolutely tears them up. And that's the problem. Most vehicles should be repaired or replaced in any police department, especially ones that are kind of in an urban setting like this, so close to the city. It basically has the same type of stressors on it. Should be replaced within 5 to 6 years at most. So obviously our fleet is well beyond that. But the Dodge Charger, which is a 2014, the fluids were leaking and it was so bad, without getting into the technical jargon of a repairman, the motor had to be replaced completely in order for that vehicle to be salvaged. There is a lot of money invested in that vehicle over the past 4 years because we have put all the vehicles on a preventive maintenance schedule. There's a lot, that money has, that vehicle in particular has absorbed a lot of that budgetary allocation because each year because of the need for it. The good news is it now has a new engine in it that only has 15,000 miles on it. It is a huge investment, but that car will last us, and it has a lot of our equipment, including our automatic license plate reader, which has given us on a grant from the Pennsylvania Auto Theft Prevention Authority in 2019, is affixed to that vehicle. Not to say we can't put it on another vehicle, but it's conducive to where it was actually structured on that vehicle. So the good news is that vehicle is already back. It is running better than it's ever run in 4 years, and probably before that. The other vehicle that we had, the 2010 Ford Crown Victoria, needed a new transmission. The problem was all these vehicles turned into the perfect storm in terms of breakdown. They all started to break down at the same time. So I had to, I certainly left the unmarked car here for an extensive period of time just in case the officers needed a backup. So, and then also we dusted, we made sure our bikes were maintained just in case the officers had to jump into a bike uniform. But however, the bikes don't have our equipment. We like to reserve them for overtime initiatives, community relations initiatives, and special events like the Narberth Run, July 4th. But they can't replace a patrol vehicle because they don't have a mobile data terminal inside, the mobile video recorder. Our officers do not have body-worn cameras. We don't have the AED and all the equipment that we have for emergency preparedness, which is in the back of those vehicles. So these are just some of the challenges that we had. The good news is they have been overcome. We now have everything back running. We're expecting again today the SUV to return. So these are the challenges that we have, but we have a lot of money invested into these vehicles, in particular the Crown Victoria I just described and also the Dodge Charger. So those things are going to work excellently, and the mileage on these vehicles, even though there's idle time on them, is very low, very low. So there's a lot of value to our current fleet. We all hear that, your most affordable car is the fleet that you own. We understand that, but it's now time for us to move the borough optically, into a different direction and to gain more cars here because we just have such a need. I can tell you recently, we were operating by the skin of our teeth on one vehicle and then leaving the other vehicle here. It had none of the infrastructure, the equipment that you needed to do the job. So we basically had to put the sergeant in the unmarked vehicle and get him out there with the officer who's working with another officer. So one of the biggest challenges that we have had here for the past 4 years have been managing the fleet. And I think we've done a tremendous job. But unfortunately, it's, we have to have a backup plan. And that's where Samantha and I have had this conversation about getting new additional vehicles. We've all talked about it. And that's kind of where we're at now. Does that sound right where we left off, Samantha?
Yeah, so as the chief mentioned, it's been really great how the borough has been more proactive with preventive maintenance schedule. As we talked about for the 2022 budget at last fall and at the beginning of this year, both from an optics perspective of the fleet the police has, from an efficiency standpoint, from our climate action plan standpoint, from an operations standpoint, we talked about potentially leasing vehicles. Council, majority of council basically established a policy starting with the 2022 budget that the borough would not be willing to commit to buying any gas-powered vehicles or equipment. At best case scenario, only leasing would be even considered for it. So to that end, this committee last month asked us to, consider electric vehicles as well as at a minimum look into leasing a hybrid vehicle. And my thanks to Cindy, who sent some information about what Lower Marion Township is doing with electric vehicles. So the chief and I did some research. When it comes to electric vehicles, it seems like departments are using either a Tesla 3 or a Mustang Mach-E. And I think just the concern that the chief and I had is just given how small the borough is, and as the chief mentioned, how the fleet that we have is so kind of hard pressed and just kind of the technology is a little bit newer, that we potentially would be without vehicles. And so we kind of wanted to maybe wait and see how Lower Marion fares with their electric vehicles, and maybe come back in a year or so and then actually purchase those. But in the meanwhile, we did want to at least commit to hybrid vehicles. There's really only one option for hybrid police vehicles, which kind of surprised me. Ford makes an Interceptor model that is a hybrid. The traditional Ford police SUV gets like 17 miles per gallon. The hybrid model gets 24 miles per gallon. In addition to that, the biggest benefit of a hybrid, as the chief mentioned, of idle time, as I'm sure people who have hybrids versus electric powered cars know, purely gas cars are constantly putting out emissions, whether idling, driving, whatever. I own a hybrid RAV4, and I can speak from personal experience that when the car is idling, 90% of the time it's not putting out any, the gas engine's not doing anything. And so Ford in the memo had some information in terms of how that benefit reduces carbon emissions per year. And while it's not the 100% elimination of emissions that you have with an electric vehicle, there were some pretty, to me, what sounded like, I'm not the expert on this here, but sounded like pretty big numbers in terms of carbon emission reduction compared to purely gas-powered vehicles. So, I mean, the chief and I are certainly open to whatever information and advice this committee has. But at least our recommendation as of this morning with what we know is that we would prefer to lease hybrid vehicles for a year or two, talk to Lower Marion about how the electric vehicles they purchase and use work out, and then, assuming all goes well over there, which I think it probably will, but just to be safe, then have the borough start purchasing electric vehicles after that. But again, I've never owned an electric vehicle. I'm not the expert on that, so I welcome, any thoughts on this.
Yeah, just one quick thought, and then others want to speak. But in terms of the timing, I know there are these wait times, for purchasing electric vehicles. So I'm thinking we want to consider that probably sooner rather than later, because it could be a year wait or a 2-year wait, which could affect, if we do decide that we have to lease, all of that goes.
Appreciate the chief's commentary on the current vehicle situation, the repairs, and what's going on with the current fleet, and Samantha, your analysis of kind of the options that are available to us. It seems to me that, like, electric vehicle, if we can imagine a fleet of vehicles that doesn't have fluids, that it doesn't have, it doesn't have any transmission fluids. They don't have oils. They don't have hoses. They don't have any of those. They don't have carburetors or fuel injection. Any of those parts. So, and then imagine a vehicle that never idles. So you've reduced, you've basically cut out on the chief #1 maintenance issue of a police vehicle, a car that never idles. So then you've got just like a very low mileage vehicle that's an electric vehicle. And I just wonder, I wonder if that actually really significantly impacts downtime, and kind of whether or not. I guess I'm trying to imagine, Chief, if we didn't have any downtime, or if let's say our downtime was cut in half, would we still need the same number of vehicles? Or even if we had the same number of vehicles, would it almost be a multiplier of available vehicles? So like if we still
Right.
had 4 cars, it's almost like now we have the equivalent of more cars.
Sure.
Because they're not.
Because there's so little maintenance.
Because there's so little
Yeah.
maintenance and
Yeah.
downtime. The
Can
other-
I just weigh in there real quick for you, Bob?
Yeah.
So one of the things Samantha and I discussed was 2 options, the one that she just described, and obviously an EcoBoost option, because it's very low on fuel.
Sure.
It's very fuel efficient. I have an EcoBoost vehicle. It works extremely well. We were talking about that. Then Samantha started to show me all the intel and the research that she did on this vehicle, and it was very appealing. I think I think that the industry itself has the best intentions to do what we all want. However, at the same time, I don't necessarily know if the technology has caught all the way up with policing.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. The first police car that was electric, that was purchased maybe by Lower Merion about a year and a half ago, 18 months ago, it sits. It does not get taken out on the street. It just sits there. The officers just don't really use it. It sits there. So it is a huge investment. It is a skin hold in the game, and it just doesn't go anywhere. That would be a problem number 1 that I would have. The other thing is too, as we talk about Lower Merion's fleet, and Samantha and I discussed this at length, it's just a bigger fleet. They have options and alternatives. So if those vehicles have to charge, if there's an issue, if there's a download component, they don't have any lost time on the street because they have other options and alternatives in terms of vehicles, because their fleet is just so big and robust. We don't have that. We're a smaller department, but we have such a critical imperative, no different than Lower Merion or any other police department, that we must keep vehicles on the street regardless, because we have to patrol our peril. So I can tell you that I think overall, these points are very valid. I'm intrigued by a lot of the things and the improvements that I see, especially some of the research that I've done. My concern, and the one thing I expressed to Samantha, is we just don't have and I'll give you an example of just a practicality issue. Say we have a vehicle, an electric vehicle, that the industry just has not caught up right now to the police standards that are needed. And I think it will, because improvements happen every day in this industry. They're always striving. I think it's going to eventually catch up, and it's going to be good. But if we have to put an electric vehicle down for some reason in the middle of a shift, charge, whatever the case may be, I don't have an electric vehicle. I don't know all that it encompasses. But I do know the basics, that I'm going to have to take an officer out of that car with all of his or her equipment, and I'm going to have to get into another car in the middle of the shift. I may have 1 officer on patrol, preferably 2 at all times if I can. But that's a challenge, and we all know, we know the size of our department. So we have to change that stuff out. So we're losing patrol time, we're losing downtime. These are just some of the challenges that we have in policing, and it's real, it's tangible.
I just want to finish my comment.
Yeah, sure. And I'm sorry.
No, Chief, I think you're completely anticipated where my head was going, so I really appreciate the commentary. I just wanted to make one more observation and then ask a question, which is that, I know that police, we may not all, as civilians, we may not all appreciate how, like, the impact on, say, a vehicle by police duty versus just regular civilian use, but just from knowing many people who have electric vehicles, the acceleration times, the ability to get around an electric vehicle is significantly better than a gas car. So I think when officers start to drive them, I think they'll find that they perform better than their gasoline engines, and that's there's a lot drivers. This is what people who are professional drivers say too. But then my question is that,
let's not encourage the officers to speed. I have
no, but I'm just saying.
It's scary technology.
But I do know that
we're going to start getting caught on the radar.
but I do know that it's important for police officers to be able to maneuver when they need to.
Sure, I
and
understand.
and I think those cars are proving to perform well.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and this is my question, I wonder if there's good data sets currently on the Tesla 3E and the Mustang Mach-E, already around performance and maintenance scheduling, and especially if our mileage is low in the borough, it stands to reason that there's going to be a whole lot less wear and tear on the parts of an electric vehicle, because nothing moves unless you're moving. They're totally, they're turned off. Now, I understand you want to, and I think you're guiding us I just want to acknowledge that I think you're guiding us through a transitional time. This is transitional technology. And I hear the wisdom in what both of you are saying about let's go slow, get it right, not end up in a position where we've like sort of acted too quickly. And so I, just with respect to everything you said.
Yeah, so just one thing to clarify is, you know, and I, as you know, I have an electric car. I would be happy, Chief, for you to drive my car, you know, give it a test run. Jim Spear does as well. And the truth is that, you know, these cars, including the Mach-E, have a range of 250 miles. To charge, to get that 250 miles, you know, in your tank, takes about 6 hours.
Sure.
You know, so I'm thinking, and you would know better, you know, that might mean charging the vehicle overnight, and then it's ready to go for the whole day, you know, without any interruption. So I could imagine, you know, getting into a good rhythm with it, you know, especially even if you had multiple EVs at one point, you can be charging one and have the other, you know, so you would always have, I think, the same kind of access to your fleet that you have now, you know.
Well, I think, Rob and Bob, to your point, I think that there is always a learning curve and growing pains with anything through transition. This is just another example of that. What I would really encourage, and Samantha and I agreed on this as professionals, as work colleagues, that we really should go out to a co-star's dealer and actually drive some of these vehicles before we actually do anything, and see what the pitfalls and the downsides and the pros are, and see how conducive they actually are to policing in a community such as our size. In addition to that, we also have to take in the size of the officers. I have one officer who's about 6'3". You know, that officer in the Dodge Charger, you know, it's very uncomfortable. And believe it or not, when you're driving around for 12 hours, that becomes an issue. When you're trying to get in and out of a car with some type of, you know, speed, you know, without being blocked up, your size becomes an issue. So that's one of the challenges that we certainly have. Now, the other officers, they're, you know, that's fine. It's not much of an issue. But you do have the one that is a challenge. And you're talking about an officer who is extremely, extremely active. You know, that will get out there and do the job very, very aggressively. So, and very appropriately, mind you. You know, not to say that he's not doing his job. He's actually doing his job. But I can tell you that the expectations that I put on the officers in terms of foot patrols alone have them getting in and out of the car. They are in and out of the car. They are putting themselves out with county radio. They are constantly in and out of the car. So there's got to be some practicality in that as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea, the test drive.
So I think going out to test drive these things, as Samantha and I have talked about, to really actually hear it. But the one thing that Samantha pointed out to me, which I was really intrigued by, that she showed me, was the actual testimonials from other chiefs and lieutenants and captains that have used the car that she found, and the testimonials were excellent.
Okay. That's
Just
the
a quick
hybrid.
comment.
Before
Yeah, that's the higher.
Yeah.
Cindy, go ahead.
So just a few quick comments. So the Mustang Mach is actually, E is an SUV, and the NYPD just ordered about 200 of them. They get about 270 miles per charge. Two quick comments. The first is I say that we request that in our MOU now that when LMPD covers for us, we would like the electric police car to be utilized in Narberth.
Great idea.
They have enough notice to have that charged.
No, we can do that.
Why can't we do
Because
that?
the MOU's already been.
Well, can we ask and we'll do it next time?
Oh, yeah, for the next MOU.
Like the electric
Sorry, I
vehicle use?
misunderstood.
Yeah. Additionally, and I think Chief, what you said was really important when you're saying like we need to move the fleet optically. I think that's what we're doing it because we're an environmentally conscious community, but our citizens expect us to be holding true to 2035, right? And what we said, that aim to beat that. And I think that's an important point too, is that we demonstrate our commitment to that as well.
And Cindy, to your point, optically, I also meant like actually the appearance of the vehicles too, in terms of decaling as well. And maybe I should have expressed.
Yeah, well, no, I think
We need
that's
a
so true,
refresh.
yeah. I think
we
that's
need,
all,
we need a fresh
it's
approach.
important.
Yeah, well, could we just request of you know, the manager and the chief to explore the timeline for an EV purchase? You know, say we want to position ourselves to have an EV in the police department in 2 years. we may need to place that order in the next 6 months or something.
Well, also too, we're gonna cut our teeth on a parking controller vehicle, EV. So that's really gonna help us with the learning curve as well.
So, but maybe my suggestion to the committee, what the chief and I could do is we could find out the availability, the pricing, get some information about the maintenance and reliability of the 3 vehicles we discussed today, the Mustang Mach-E, the Tesla 3, and the Ford Interceptor Hybrid. And then we can come back to the committee with actual, this is how much they cost, this is what their availability is, this is what the charge time, this is what the, as Bob suggested, the maintenance and downtime sort of studies on these vehicles are. And then we'll all be in a fully kind of informed place to make a decision on how to move forward.
And the lag time, you know, in ordering.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
Their wait list for some of these, yeah.
In the Ford F-150 Lightning, completely oversold.
Oh, wow.
And that's on a huge chassis. Like whatever's built on that, like the Bronco or whatever, is going to be an incredible, very large electric vehicle that, you know, we might need one of those someday.
Oh yeah, I'd love to talk about that.
And that's something to go, I would suggest you go drive it. It's out of this world. It's really,
No, don't worry, once we get to talk
Incredible
about
truck.
police cars, I think we're gonna, I think even this committee or infrastructure is gonna talk about some
Oh, okay.
public work stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
10:15.
Plus-
Okay,
Can we
okay.
get
Plus
that
you can
outdoor
plug the
dining,
power
because I
tools
would
in.
hate to see us.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
actually, go slow on this.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry, can we just wrap up the police vehicle thing? Because we did, as the chief mentioned, for the parking controller, you know, the chief
Uh-huh.
and I are comfortable with the parking controller going ahead and having an EV, because worst case scenario, if there is downtime or charging time, the nature of the parking controller shop is a little different than
Right,
a police
right.
officer.
Yeah,
Pricing on that have different kind of levels of range. It seemed like the more range you got out of it, the more expensive it got. But the expensive one in the list that I have, I think, was like $41,000. We budgeted $40,000 for it. So I don't know if the committee's comfortable, if you want to go instead of a plug-in EV, if you want to go a full bore
yeah.
EV, we could do that as long as we're just willing to spend that extra $1,000 beyond the budget. Or again, if you all know of another vehicle that's more affordable, that might be a good option. You know, I think we're open to learning more about it.
Yeah, the Chevy Bolt, I think, would be a great option. Michelle Panopoulos has Chevy Bolt.
The you saying, yeah.
And,
So that's her license plate.
yeah, and it's actually cheaper, I think, than some of these here, with the 250-mile range.
We're on the parking controller vehicle right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's a smaller vehicle, but I think it would work really well.
I think there was, the one thing that we were taking into consideration with weather challenges is all-wheel drive, electric vehicle. I know that was one of the things that we discussed too. We would prefer it to be all-wheel drive if possible because of snow.
So, yeah, I don't know what people think, but I would rather see us go with an electric vehicle rather than a hybrid for this one.
Yeah, so the I forget which vehicle model it is. The last one I have on there, I think it's the Kia 6 maybe, is $41,000 and change. It is 100% electric. It has a range of like 252 miles or something like that. And it does have all-wheel drive as well.
Oh, okay.
Great.
So if we're comfortable, like I said, it's just $1,000 more than what we budgeted. If we're comfortable with looking into, you know, test driving and moving forward with that, I think the chief and I could do that.
We'll save that $1,000 on fuel and maintenance alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right, and we already have our
You never
charger.
change the oil on these.
Yeah.
You never have any oil change
Yeah.
downtime.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think we'd be comfortable, whatever you prefer. As, you know, our recommendation would be all electric. So,
Also consider that the parking controllers, you know, have to clear the snow zones. And so they have to get around the borough, clear those roads during bad weather. So I think the all-wheel drive element is an important element.
okay. Well, that's good. Sounds like the Kia could be the one.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, so you know, we don't have too much time. I'm thinking that we could at least get through the next two items, 4.2 and 4.3. I know Cindy needs to leave by 10 or so. Okay. So why don't we go to 4.2 next and then 4.3?
Sure.
Okay. So my thanks to Cindy for putting together a proposal, and then I added a few items that I had discussed with the mayor and we had discussed as a committee last time. So this is a draft just to kind of explain what this new committee could be. And the idea is we could take a few minutes now to discuss it and then share it with the rest of council. So are there any thoughts on what we have here? You know, one thing is meeting. Yeah, of course, yeah. We set 4 meetings a year, and we set it up with, I think originally I had 3 members, and then we thought maybe 5 members would be better. It's an advisory committee, just like the environmental advisory committee, and it would almost serve as a research arm of this committee, so that we could assign a recommendation that we could consider.
I'd just like to say, first of all, thank you for, I think Cindy, did you put this together?
Mm-hmm.
My one suggestion would be just to change the order of it, just for the public who might be reading it. Just start with the Narberth application as the first part, and switch it around. So then if people can get the basics of it, and then if they want to read deeper, they can go. Like maybe in a historical framework might actually be footnote rather than you know the lead. The lead there. I know that it's you know.
Yeah, the academics go for
Seriously,
this kind of stuff.
yeah. I mean,
You guys are both college professors.
point taken.
Okay, thank you. Because I think what you're at, like what is being asked for, kind of makes sense. We want the community involved with public health and safety. Like we want more than just a committee and council people, but we want an active and an engaged. And I actually think this is something that, you know, to have the community involved in their police, with their police force. And this seems like a great opportunity to relationship. And it's kind of like the chief is always reaching out to us, chance to kind of reach back and meet him. It's like,
right.
And so I think this is a way to do that.
I appreciate that.
So can we share the draft up?
Oh, the chief doesn't have this.
Oh,
Hasn't seen this.
Oh, aren't you on the email?
Did I get it? If I got it, I apologize.
Hold on,
We'll send it right over.
yeah, you're on there.
Okay.
It is 22. You know, Bob, I hear you loud and clear. And I think Rob and I actually both probably need that healthy reminder. And my point in doing that was just to say, this is actually nothing new. This is, you know, rooted in the development of policing structure, but as well as is happening nationally and regionally. And I think a footnote is an appropriate place for folks who want to learn more.
But it is new, sort of like, because you're saying civilians want to be involved.
Yeah, and I think it's also an opportunity. It's actually the, you know, so lots of municipalities are doing this. Even larger and more, you know, more hyper local. So, you know, Philadelphia obviously is the large one. Philadelphia has issues that we thankfully do not have. The 16th district, I was in on Monday talking to actually a business owner who is on their police advisory council. And she was saying, you know what, it's actually an opportunity for us to share information with police because we're in a different position, you know, to gather like community concerns or questions. So, you know, we're really looking at this as kind of a reciprocal. So we'll meet and then invite the police at points that, and I think that's really how I envision this happening here too, as a co-learning, reciprocal advisory council, expanding our notion of public health and safety.
So the only thing I would recommend is just do some research. What I envision this to be is kind of modeled after what's known as a Police District Advisory Commission in the city of Philadelphia. It has a lot of same cross-pollination and cross-referencing in there, as you or have described them during the past 2 meetings. So I would look at that and see what takeaways you want from that. The Police District Advisory Council, where they meet with the commanding officer in each district throughout the city, usually about 4 times a year, sometimes monthly, it depends on need, but it's a great program. It started out in the city of Philadelphia, and it has a lot of characteristics to what you're actually talking about for the past 2 meetings. So if you ever want to research Police District Advisory Council for the city of Philadelphia, it'll take you to the website. It'll show you different members. It's actually some connection to the Police Clergy Association too, but you can actually glean a lot of good ideas off of it. And within it, it has like workshops set in it, like where you can ask the chief or ask this or ask that. And then there's also workshops, and then there's a whole where more people are invited to get involved in it. There's a whole lot of moving parts to it. It's very good.
I do think moving from 3 to 4 to just to mirror the EAC, so we'll be consistent anyway. And John, I particularly like that idea of cross-pollination, because that's really what it is. You have the business owners, advising, public works, the anti-racist, the police. I mean, that's exactly what it is.
In the Police District Advisory Commission, you could have a business, you could have a retired person that lives on a given block.
That's what we talked about.
You could have someone who works in another part of civil service outside. There's a whole,
That's what
John, that's exactly who we identified. A business owner. How do we get a senior citizen, or I don't know how we want to phrase that. How do we get someone who's younger? Because they provide a really unique perspective. Someone from our anti-racist coalition and committee.
I love the idea. I think it's a great idea. I suggested to Rob that it run a little bit like the Harp, in that you have, people described. There are set positions, so you can look at the situations from different angles. I think that is helpful.
That's a great idea, Andrew. Maybe we follow up with Walco how to describe age or demographics. That's a great idea.
The Harp has, specific viewpoints of a problem, and it's like the old parable of looking at the elephant. Everybody blindfolded, everybody sees something different. But when you see something as a whole, I think you get a much more comprehensive understanding of an issue.
Yeah,
that's good, Andrea.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm just taking to the chief's point that the Police District Advisory Commission as a model for kind of what's already going on in Philadelphia, and I'm wondering, was that born out of like a partnership between police officers of the community, or was it the community coming to the police department, or was it the police saying, hey, we need to kind of be, we're losing touch with the residents, or the citizens, we need to be, how was that, like, what's the kind of thrust of it?
The Police District Advisory Council is basically a child that was born of police-community relation concepts that were originated in Norfolk, Virginia, and Newport News, Virginia in the early 80s. And then Philadelphia basically took it to the next step, and they created, it was the Philadelphia Police Department that actually created the Police District Advisory Commission.
From the department
the police
to the residents.
reaching out and then going, yeah,
that was, I think that's really interesting, and I wanted to
and
discuss that,
It's focused on quality of life. And I mean, I really think that's what our advisor is.
Actually, it's also information sharing too. We get information about crime, about quality of life issues like vandalism, graffiti, things like that. Very, very important. I mean, a lot of the other concepts you're talking about, but with the FaceTime, the in-person communication, to actually listen to people and say, hey, listen, we just heard this, this, and this, and this. That's where the rubber meets it's the road, to find out that information. And believe it or not, you're learning with each other, because sometimes there are voids, there are gaps where police don't know exactly where things are occurring, or maybe it's not being reported. It can happen in any community.
Yeah. Well, this is great. I think we're all on the same page. How about I'll work on a revised version of this draft with Cindy, taking in the different suggestions, and then I'll share it with the committee again.
I think, if the committee is comfortable, if we want to really if we want to move it along further, I think we can maybe revise the draft and just go ahead and send it to John.
Maybe it's not the cart before the horse. Maybe we ask one of those members if we're all interested in that environmental design certification, maybe we ask someone on that committee or offer someone
yeah.
on that committee, would you want to
Yeah.
sort
Well, it's like I think you're identifying there's a particular role there
Correct.
in the committee for someone who is like that
Yeah.
sector of interest.
correct?
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
maybe we
really
identify that.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. That's
Okay.
one of the, like the Harp has a real estate
Yeah.
broker. We need a,
Mhm,
we need an
right.
environmental design
designer.
person.
Right, right.
I actually have a suggestion for someone who would be terrific on this committee. John McAllister, Chief, help me out. He's a citizen, lives in Narberth, retired police officer from Philadelphia, but very kind of, he watches very closely what happens in the community and understands, how the different parts work. His wife is Meryl, and they're always walking around the downtown. I don't know if you know.
Oh, yeah, John is a retired detective from the Major Crimes Unit.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
exactly.
I think John this would be right up his alley. He would be terrific on this.
Well, let's get the job descriptions and the roles, and then maybe
Yeah.
you can invite them to apply.
Yeah,
I think that would be terrific.
Great.
okay. So I'll work on that and share it with everyone, and then we'll go from there so we can bring it to council. Okay, thank you. So the last item I think we have time for is the outdoor dining. Samantha, will that work if we kind of end after this?
Yeah, that'd be great. I think the other items are important, but I think they can wait a month if we need.
Okay,
We can also move that tax credit to FNA if that's helpful,
okay.
if it's immediate.
Yeah, because that's kind of where it was before, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Or whatever.
I figured I'd put it on here because the fire folks
Yeah,
attend
okay,
this
and I'm going Monday, so I'll
Oh.
report back.
Oh, good, thank you for that, by the way.
And actually, I would like to suggest that maybe, I don't know if this has been done already, maybe that stormwater management ordinance stuff, I mean, could we send that down to the EAC to discuss since we haven't
Yes.
had a chance to get
Yes,
to it?
let's do that,
Fabulous.
Okay, cool.
yeah.
All right, and then the civil service stuff, we can talk about that next month.
Okay.
Can I just ask, is there any reason the volunteer fire tax credit increase can't just be presented to council immediately? Like, is there some reason it needs to be committeed first?
No, I just figured that everything in the borough goes through a committee before going to
Well,
council.
could we just
first.
say like, could we just agree to send that on to council?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's fine.
That way you could
Yeah.
put a
Rather
check
than-
next, you could put a check mark next to it.
I like check marks.
On your
All right,
way, you know?
we'll put that on the
So
council.
we've
agenda.
all agreed, okay.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks,
All
Bob.
right.
Okay,
Let me get my packet open
clear
here.
the
Yes,
desk.
we have the.
Yeah, absolutely, love it.
So with the outdoor dining, which are now, I love Michelle Panopoulos' suggestion to call them streeteries. I love that term. So the infrastructure committee talked a little about the sort of decorative aspect of streeteries. And this committee has been focused on, ensuring that public safety is maintained with them. And there's a section in what our council vice president, Michelle Panopoulos, put together that I've copied and pasted into this memo for review by this committee. And it's just kind of these minimum sort of safety barriers. And while we have the chief here with us this morning as well, I just want to see if this made sense to everyone to move forward with, or if we felt like we need to do something different. And I'll read real quick for everyone's benefit. So safety barriers must be placed minimum 1 foot from the parking space edges and a maximum of 1 foot from the edge of the travel lane. And there are two options provided for these safety barriers. Either a water-filled barrier, a water-filled jersey barrier, 72 inches long, for various size parking stalls, or planters that are minimum height of 30 inches, minimum of 12 inches, minimum of 24 inches, with minimum 2 planters used. I would say just my gut instinct, and sorry, there's a possible third option, 6-foot rubber parking blocks to be placed 2 to 4 feet from the side wall of the structure. This would only help protect against bad parallel parkers, but would not provide other protection. I like the sound of the planters and the rubber parking blocks. I'll admit I'm not too much on the water-filled Jersey barrier because I don't think that's really any different than what we have out there already.
Yeah,
We're trying to get rid of that.
No, they're not aesthetically pleasing at all.
The one, I'm surprised actually not to see here the option of like 12-inch gabions, which are, rock-filled crates, and they can be done in any length. I've seen them a lot in Brooklyn and in Manhattan, and they're attractive. The other idea is like, basically, I saw them in other big cities.
Yeah, how do you?
Gabion, G-A-B-I-O-N-S. People can fill them with whatever they want, so they have different looks, and you can grow stuff in them and whatever.
Mhm.
But the other thing is like I've seen in other urban places, they'll just use like
Can you spell it one more time?
Oh, G-A-B-I-O-N-S. G-A-B.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm just gonna share my screen.
Michelle has this in her backyard, as a matter of
She
fact.
does,
right,
she
that's
does
right.
have them, yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty,
They're really beautiful.
they're certainly more labor intensive than a water-filled barrier,
Yeah.
but maybe not so different than a planter. Like, when you, and they can be moved with a forklift or a crane. The same way the water barrier, well, I guess the water barriers are empty, it can be moved by hand. But
Is this what you're envisioning though?
Yeah.
well, yeah, something like that. I've seen those used in urban areas, but I've also seen those done with just plywood, like without the basket, without the rock container. People just use build a plywood frame and fill them with soil or rock, and that provides the protection needed. I see a lot of those in urban places. And then in a lot of urban places, you don't see any protection at all.
Yeah.
Like, drive down Locust Street or Pine Street or,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
cross streets in Center City, and like you just
You
see
just see the actual street or
the streeter, and it's
Right.
like, they don't seem to have an issue.
I'll admit that while that does exist, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm being a little too conservative here, and I welcome the chief's thoughts. That just makes me like, I don't know. That makes me a little too worried. And I would think something like this would never happen in Narberth. Just like the horror stories you hear people either accidentally or intentionally driving into things sometimes. Just makes me a little queasy about not requiring anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think given the issues we have with that speed coming down that hill, until we get those raised pedestrian crosswalks, I appreciate that. I do think, however, we need to get this solved by spring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are many examples locally of folks who are doing this where it's aesthetically pleasing. These Jersey barriers are awful.
Mhm.
I don't think we want to reopen our community with that streetscape. So I have to say, I think we should just be expeditious, run it by our traffic engineer and order.
So maybe my suggestion then would be, in the purpose of expediency, as we go with this, with the exception of instead of we get rid of the mention of the water-filled barrier and add on mention of the gabions as Bob suggested.
By the way, those costs are way more than what it really costs to make one.
Oh, yeah.
Like you buy the wire and you build them and you fill them with rock. It's not like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They're just wire panels, you wire them together by hand. It's super easy to make.
And could we
Like you
set
don't
up a
have to buy a gabion, you buy the wire and you put them
Yeah.
together and you fill them up.
Could we offer to partner with the garden club and volunteers
To build them?
to build these?
Why not? Well, if they
Well,
want to
that's
do it.
part where it gets a little
I like to do
trickier,
it.
is that question of like, is the borough gonna pay for it or not?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think for the minimum, I would say probably my take on this has been, for the minimum safe barrier, the borough probably should pay for it since we're the ones requiring it. And then for any of the decorative stuff, that
Yeah.
infrastructure's on, that's on the business, if they
Yeah.
wanna go above and beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Samantha, could it be part of one of these grants?
I don't think, I mean, how much money are we really talking?
It's not that much, right?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we could afford it.
I do think there's kind of a,
Are we gonna include
Aesthetic
that
bar.
county grant thing?
like aesthetically, we have some interest, the borough has some interest in making sure, yes, it's safe, but it's also, there's a minimum and aesthetic.
Yeah, no, we absolutely want to be welcoming people back to our downtown now that COVID is easing. And this is an important moment this spring,
Yep.
Oh.
So,
All right, so what I'll do, sorry, just looking at our time here, is this, like I said, I'll modify this to take off mention of the Jersey barrier. I'll add mention of the deviants. I'll run this by our traffic engineer, and then I think we'll be in position, to start doing it.
okay, great. And would you mind just coordinating with Michelle? Because I know as infrastructure chair, she was kind of waiting on this piece from our committee. And that way she can move ahead.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Because Samantha, you had suggested, correct me if I'm wrong, but the traditional kind of cafe barriers
Yeah,
as well, right, as an option.
yeah, but I felt people didn't like that.
Oh, I like that with the,
Oh, thank you.
with the, and with that and with some planners.
Yeah.
I actually think it's interesting to say, here are your options, the Gibeon, the cafe with planters, give businesses 3 options so they can kind of create their own place. That's one of the really neat things about Philadelphia is to see what each establishment has kind of, how they've made it their own.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Yeah, if you're cool with that, I'll add
Yeah.
that to the list as well. Thank you, Cindy.
Well, thank you, it was your idea.
Okay, good. So I think we're going to stop there because we're over time, and we will meet the first Friday of April. Okay, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.